thank you so much for coming to our little chat, our little conversation today. I'm Purumi, and I am the assistant to chair at Creative Enterprise Leadership at Pratt. We are a graduate program that focuses on sustainability as well as business. So I would like to say we're like a business program, but with a focus in sustainability. How do we make profit for the people and the planet, So triple bottom line. I'm going to pass it to Yutaka, who's going to introduce our speakers today.
Hi, everybody. I'm Yutaka Takiura. I'm an associate professor at Pratt, teaching in this CEL over, just I don't know, some 12, 13, 14 years. And today I'm just try to introduce amazing people who agree to participate and give a talk today and have a nice conversation. It's a creative enterprise leadership invites you guys to a discussion centered around sustainability, inspiration, and inclusion with a superstar Emiko McCoy. And before going to amazing Emiko's talk, she was chat with Innocent, Ekujuba. Is that correct, Innocent?
I mean, it's not correct. Ekejuba, but
Ekejuba, close enough.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Innocent. So Innocent is also a fascinating alumni, and he's now teaching as a assistant professor in this program. And you graduate from ACM, right? Art and Cultural Management, and we know each other for a few years. And so if you want to add anything, just go ahead and do it. Then let me introduce Emiko McCoy. And she was raised in Dunn, North Carolina, and as a daughter of cotton pickers, her journey from humble beginnings to designing for renowned brands like Vera Wang, Nike, and so many other is nothing short of inspiring. High educational pursuit at a Pratt Institute, a master in design management a few years ago, further deepened her commitment to sustainable design. And she can add more, but too much to list, honestly. So without further ado, go ahead, take it away, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yutaka. And thank you for joining us, Emiko. It's a pleasure having this conversation with you, and getting to know you for the past couple of weeks since we've been brewing this has been quite delightful. So without further ado, I would like to get very much into it. And so like I said, over the couple of weeks I've gotten to know you, I've kind of been having conversations, and one of the things that stands out for me is your interest in boxing. And I know we spoke briefly about the fight between Anthony Joshua and Francis Ngannou. And I remember when we were talking about this fight, I asked you what your thoughts was about Francis Ngannou in the fight, and you mentioned how his stance failed him, how yeah, and I thought that was quite interesting, right? Because Francis Ngannou is not a little guy. He's
right. Yeah, you can tell his stance was off. His stance was off. Right. Innocent, I said his stance was off. You can look at
his stance was off. But this is someone who is a UFC heavyweight champion.
Yes.
Won out 12 knockouts, and someone who went 10 rounds with Tyson Fury and only lost by split decision. But then when it came to the fight with Anthony Joshua, his stance was off. And I also could see that, not being having so much knowledge in boxing, but being someone who watches boxing over time. And it made me think about how how sometimes in everything we do, the positions, the stance we take, basically, how we shape our form in order to approach some of these things, how important it is, regardless of whatever victories we might be coming with in our back pockets, or regardless of whatever, status we currently have, the stance and the form with which we approach whatever situation is right in front of us really matters, and it translates to life experience. So I'm interested in understanding what, from your extensive knowledge of boxing, what you've learned from this particular importance of form, stance, and how your interest in boxing translates into your life experiences.
Yes, there's a lot of questions in there all at once, but I'll try to answer all of them. So I just want to go back. I'm sorry. Sorry. I want to go back to this page. I just want to start off and say my name is Emiko McCoy. My views, I do not come in representation of anyone except for myself. So these are my views. And these are things that, I learned from being in the DM Pratt program. And I just wanted to be able to have this opportunity to speak to other Pratt students. So again, my name is Emiko McCoy. I am an American fashion designer. I do not stand here by myself. I stand here with my mom and my dad. I stand here with my family. I stand here with my tribe. I stand here with all of my ancestors that came way before me, and I'm standing on their shoulders, and I'm very proud of that, and I'm very grateful for that. So I just wanted to say that at the very beginning. So now we can get into boxing, right? So I wanted to say, so going back to stance, so stance is very important. And so, as you know, I love boxing, right? And so because of my love for boxing, I've been loving it since I was a little girl. I remember seeing Mike Tyson dominate the boxing world over, many, many, many fights, over many champions. And so imagine this is a moment where he has to dig in deep, and he has to think about his mental toughness. And it's not necessarily about physical toughness. So this is the first moment that he came back after biting Holyfield's ear, right? And so this was his first fight. This was his first fight back into the same ring. So imagine what he had to do in order to get back up. What did he have to do to keep standing? And let's talk about what Mike Tyson's stance is. His stance in boxing is orthodox, but he can also do southpaw. But in this moment in time, he's about to go through this tunnel into this first fight back into the ring. So imagine the toughness that he's having to dig in, the mentalness, and how he's able to actually be able to go into battle. So I wanted to show this really quick.
And his knockouts were over second-rate fighters. Now the crowd once more as he gets into the ring. But it's certainly nothing overwhelming. Bobby, I got to ask you, how significant will the first round be here?
Steve, the significance of the first round is crucial for both fighters. If Tyson is moving his head, getting inside, and landing regularly and consecutively, it's going to be a short night. The flip side to that coin is that if both is effective with his jab, holds my bomb, starts landing the right hand, and ties Tyson hands up in the inside, they're in for a long fight, and we're in for a tough night.
So the crowd awaits as we check the tail of the tape.
So imagine this moment again. First off, let's talk about the outfit. The outfit is amazing, right? And so for Mike Tyson, again, this is a moment after the Holyfield fight where he had that moment. And here he is having to stand back up from that moment. But at the same time, the crowd is scared of him. The crowd he's like coming in menacing. He's coming into battle. He's coming in to stand. He's coming in to, stand his ground and to actually, show what he is as a champion and as a fighter. So to me, whenever I saw this, I was like, wow, that is a moment, again, mental toughness versus physical toughness, and also making sure that you stand. And what is your stance? So just going to this next quote, the fight is won or lost far away from the witnesses, behind the lines, in the gym, and out there on the road, long before I danced under those lights. This is by Mr. Muhammad Ali. So I bring this quote up because it goes back to what Tyson was going through. Imagine it was all about practice. Imagine after that moment, and after that moment where he had to get back up and keep standing, he had to figure out, okay, am I going to fight another day, or am I going to, end up buckling? So imagine, going back to practicing, going back to doing the same thing in a routine over and over again. That's mental toughness. And I think for me, whenever I think about stance, and when you talk about stands, That is what I think about, and digging your feet down into the ground and standing for something. And that's what he did that night during that fight. So he actually knocked out his opponent in the 5th round. And he said that he was embarrassed at the fact that it took him until the fifth round, but he knew that he was going to knock him out. So imagine, again, you being Mike Tyson, the biggest, baddest fighter in the world. And here you are up against opposition. And what is the stance, or what is the stand that he decided to take? And he decided to fight another day. So, and that's why he is the icon, the GOAT that he is right now.
All right. So to flashback a bit to you as a person, to you as a person, and what's come to learn about you. You describe yourself as, like you said you're not just standing here alone. You're standing here well, with your parents. You carry this history along with you, and history has always been something that I've always weighed heavily on people from time to time. And I know there's a curator, Koyo, who once said something, that no one fell from the sky. Basically, we're a product of a certain history. And you work in a fashion space, you work as a designer in a fashion space, and part of the material often used in that particular space is cotton. It's a very predominant material used in that space. And cotton is not something that just there today. There's a long history of cotton, actually goes all the way back to the slavery period, where cotton, cocoa, sugar were some of the more common plantation plants that have transitioned into today into being some staples of life, being with the boom of the chocolate industry, and also in the boom of fashion industry. There seems to be a lot of focus on that. So I'm curious as to how your heritage and your history basically informs your relationship between history and present, and informs what you do today.
Nice. Good question. I mean, also, I feel like my background is backwards. So for anybody that sees it backwards, I'm just noticing it might be on Miro. But this is my mom and my dad, right? So my mom and my dad were, and whenever I think about them, I think about love, and I think about everything and the impact that they had on me, and the impact that they had within, their own generations. And so just going to that, I am the daughter of cotton pickers. My mom and my dad started picking cotton when they were 5 years old in different farmlands. So imagine they picked not only cotton, but also tobacco, sweet potatoes, wheat, and also corn. So imagine hearing the stories of my mom talking about being out there in that field, picking cotton and being harvesters. And that's what they were. So it was never anything about, it was all about pride. It was all about family. And so to your point about tracing it back, it was a moment where I finally realized, like, the more she talked about, the fact that they were harvesters and they were out there with their hands in the soil, I started wondering, like, what was the process? Like, did somebody tell you one day to, like, go and get what was it? Like, what was that day like? And she said, well, she remembers that she was 5 years old because her cousin started at the same time. And her grandmother gave her a satchel, and she bent down and she showed her how to pull the cotton and to pull the seeds out. And so that's what they did. And so as she's telling me this beautiful American history story, I'm sitting there like, wow, imagine that the same way that my mom was taught by her grandmother how to harvest, that generations before me, all the way to ancestors, probably were in the same area harvesting also. Like, that is in my opinion, that is the beautiful story of cotton. And for me, cotton is a love story. For other people, they might not experience cotton the same way that I do because of the way that I grew up with it. But cotton for me is love. Cotton for me is family. Cotton for me is, being home and knowing where I came from. And so I would love to just show what. And so this is cotton, and this is cotton in its own landscape, right? This is cotton in the soil. This is cotton that has came up from the soil. And so what I didn't realize is that a lot of people along my journey, so like you said, before. I've been in fashion industry for the last 18 years, right? And so throughout my entire fashion career, cotton has always followed me wherever company that I went to. And so just imagine my story of growing up with cotton and seeing it like bloom from the ground. And I took it for granted because there were people in New York or other places that had never seen a bud of cotton before. And so everywhere that I would go, I would always bring a bud of cotton with me. Whenever I went to New York or came here to Oregon, cotton has always followed me. So to your point, Innocent, it's almost like it's American history and it's our history, but it's history that we don't always talk about, but it's a part of history that to me, like I said, is beautiful and it represents love.
Mm. Yeah, but also interestingly, I mean, there's a writer, Nigerian writer, Emmanuel Duma, once wrote something, I can't remember it word for it, but something about where is the future in nostalgia. He was asking the question, where is the future in nostalgia? And I know in conversation, the way I interpreted it was more like, as opposed to being constantly nostalgic, it's more important we learn from history, and history is full of, everyone's history is a huge basket of choices being made. And it's, so there is the question of, are you going to see cotton as like you said, as a tool of love for you, or a tool of commerce for some people, or a tool of knowledge for some other people? So there's always going to be that question of choice. But then also with this comes more difficult choices. If you do see it as a tool of commerce, how then do you apply yourself to it? If you see it as a tool of an industry, how then do you basically apply yourself to it? Which leads me to the question of how do you come about, like, given your relationship with cotton, and given what you feel about people taking stance and positions in life, how exactly do you come about the choices, and how do you feel about the choices that have to be made towards building a sustainable future? And there is one quote I would like to read out just before we get into this, and it's a quote from a Canadian poet, Shane Quexan, who, if you know me, I quote way too much. So he writes that, so know what you choose to stand for. So know that what you choose to stand for is what will inform what you've chosen to stand against. So stand. Let each foot crash land into what you believe, and plant them there firmly, so that they may take roots in your conviction. So the idea of the choices you make inform what choices you don't make, and also your convictions. And this is part Earth Action Week, and the whole conversation is about sustainability. How do you come about making those hard to make choices towards building a sustainable future, and how has that played out across your career so far?
Okay, there's a lot of questions. I want to try to answer all of them. So going into the first thing that I want to talk about is, let's talk about, I know that we just talked about how beautiful cotton is. We talked about how much, there is a love for cotton. But then at the same time, you just said a beautiful quote where basically you dig your heels in, right? You know that you're going into battle and you dig your heels in, and you go ahead and you make those decisions to make sure that there is a sustainable future. So just before we talk about that sustainable future, let's talk about some facts first, right? So cotton is the most widely used nature fiber on the planet. It's more sustainable than synthetic fibers such as plastic. It is renewable and supports 250 million people globally. It is worn around the world. Over 25 million tons of cotton is produced every year. India, China, and the US are top producers of cotton and actually make approximately 70 tons, I can't see it, 70% of the world's production volume. So imagine that cotton is also sensitive to changing of climates. So imagine as the world is actually getting warmer, the soil is also getting warmer. If the soil gets warmer, that means that that's going to affect the cotton plant. That's going to affect how it actually blooms and buds. So imagine, I was going to go back and show you the actual full bud. So imagine instead of having a full bud, you have only maybe strands, or you have maybe not enough to be able to produce. So then that's actually going to that's going to have a drastic effect on productivity and also economies and global supply chains. But how do we get to better, right? Cotton has a long history in the clothing industry, but how do we actually make better informed choices based on sustainable practices in consumption? How can we make a more transparent supply chain to reduce the industry environmental footprint? And also, how do we quantify and verify and make verifiable goals in key areas such as land use, water reduction, greenhouse gases, and energy use? So at the end of the day, the end goal is to make a better for planet and better for people, but also making sure that we're making profit at the same time. So I said all of that to say that that was a lot to unpack, right? And also, what does it mean? It means that we have to start making hard choices. So you asked about hard choices and making a stance, right? In order to make hard choices and to make a stance, you have to build a more sustainable future. But with that being said, what does it mean to be sustainable? So being sustainable means meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations. And so whenever I think about future generations, I'm like, okay, what are we building for? What is it that we are actually leaving for them? Are we leaving them breadcrumbs? Are we leaving them a DNA? What exactly are we leaving them? So I love this book. It's called Cradle to Cradle. I feel like everybody should go get it. It's up on the screen. And it's actually by William McDonald and Michael Brandon. And so it was one of the books that Dr. Mary McBride, she gave it to us our first year. And so imagine it was like oh my God, it was a mind wide open of opportunities like, wow, I never even thought about that before. And so reading through this book as a designer, it makes you understand that how can we make a better industrial revolution? How do we build better product? How do we start to build more sustainable product? How do we actually be able to relook at the way that we live? How do we actually consume better? So with all of that being said, let's talk about verbiage. In order to make better, we have to have a better carbon footprint. But what does that mean, right? So what is a carbon footprint? Total amount of carbon dioxide emissions resulting from a person, product, or activity, such as transportation, heating, or electricity generating. Its global average carbon footprint per person is 4.7 tons per year. US has an average of 14.7 tons per person due to lifestyle consumptions. So what are some simple ways that we can reduce your carbon footprint? So again, whenever I say make a difficult decision, right now we are making decisions where we're not leaving any breadcrumbs for the future generations. We are literally only living for today, and we are making product only for today. What are we thinking about whenever we are designing? Are we making sure that we're making sustainable versions at the very beginning of the design process? Or are we only doing that in the middle or at the end? If you put that in the very beginning, you start to have more recyclable materials, and you start to think about what the end life is, or the life cycle. So are you going to actually have things that are recyclable or things that are just throw away? Can that shirt or can that jacket end up being seeds that could go back into the earth? Or is it something that's going to end up in a third world country landfill? So I think these are the hard choices, but at the same time, I'm like, how do we make a simplified version of those hard choices? Single-use plastic bottles. Those are one of the things that during COVID, the increase of single-use plastic bottles increased because everybody was buying the 48 to 72 boxes of water versus if you just have your plastic water, if you can see this, inside of either a glass container, that's going to help the environment and that carbon footprint that we were talking about. Reduce and rethink your transportation. Think about bike versus car. Turn down heat by 1 degree. Take short showers. Turn off your water while brushing or cleaning dishes. Unplug your phone once fully charged. So these are the things for me that if you want to make some hard choices and you want to stand for something, let's stand for sustainability. Let's stand for making sure that we leave something for the next generations so that they can go to the stars, so that they can live on the moon. You understand me? But right now we are using up so many of our resources that we're not necessarily leaving anything for them behind or leaving anything for them to be able to build on top of. So how do we build a better system or better ways to make sure that we're a better planet, people, and for profit? I know that was a long answer.
Oh no, it's very much fair. It was a long question, so a long answer is was kind of expected. And I actually would like to add, because um there is this Nigerian musician who once sang that, well, I just realized it was not in English, so I'll have to translate it. If you're told it's easy, then it's a setup. It's not going to be easy, right? None of this process is easy. It's, however, it takes dedication. The poet Reina Maria Rauch in Letters to the Young Poets once wrote that almost everything serious is difficult, and everything is serious, and it's something that I hold to heart. So I mean, it's been raining all day in New York City. It's been raining since yesterday morning. It's almost
Wow.
48 hours of rain, and you
Wow.
can't tell me that this isn't a result of climate change, right? The effects it's had on us. So we also need to understand that these little steps we take are very much important in the grand scheme of things. Um, but anyway, um, I was gonna ask you about the goals. I was curious about what goals, but you've personally set for yourself with regards to building a sustainable future. And I understand, and I actually like the way you explained the entire relationship between cotton and life cycles. So I'm curious, like, what's in your life right now? Do you have any peculiar goals that you've set with regards to either sustainability or maybe, who knows, boxing?
Right. I would love to get back to boxing, but I had a neck injury that I can't do the quick turn. So I've been hating it for the last 2 years that I can't go back to boxing yet. So I would love to explore boxing. But to your point, I think for me, it is like, how do I take, and I say this, I'll put this quote up. Oh, this was all I want to say also for the last little bit too. The reason why I brought up all of that as far as carbon footprint, sustainability, talked about cotton, talked about boxing is, why are all those things important? And it's because those things save the planet, right? Being more sustainable, being able to make better product, being able to make better things for people, and also protecting our oceans, that is going to make us better, all the way around. So I just wanted to say that. But then at the same time, I think for me, at this point in my career, I've learned so much from Pratt Institute, and I've learned so much from, like I said, Dr. Mary, and she's given me so many tools in my toolbox, along my journey from 2009, since I've been in the DM program, that I've been able to add more tools into that toolbox. So I think for me, it's like, how do I continue to add more tools? How do I refine the tools that I have? How do I make a better version of myself? How do I make the best version of myself, right? And I think it goes to this quote, may you find your purpose in being the solution for the problem that you see. And so this was by Cheryl D. Miller, which was the speaker at the Pratt Class 2023 last year. And so when I read this quote, I was like, this is like the change. What is the change that you want to be, or what is the change that you want to see? And I think for me, that is where I am, and that's where I've always been. Meaning, like, how do I want to make a bigger impact? How do I want to make a better impact? And also, what are the decisions and the choices that I have to make in order to make those things happen? So that's where I am right now with just trying to figure it all out, but definitely have sustainability goals as far as just trying to figure out how do we make things better. And it's just not even just in the fashion industry, but it's across all industries. How can we make better product across all industries with making better choices as far as sustainability pieces and materials and all of the components at the very beginning of the phases, so that we can make better stuff.
Yeah. If I may stick in one more question in there about making all of this better. And it just occurred to me that a constant problem people face or rather, a constant problem some people face when they are conversing with general public and people about some of these problems is apathy. People sometimes have become quite apathetic to some of these conversations, either because of media overload or because a lot of people are really going through a lot individually. So they've become in some way desensitized and unconcerned about this. And I really think, personally believe, that we have to dismiss that apathy and reject uncertainty because it is possible. And I'm just my question is, what do you have to say towards that continuous growth and continuous overshadowing of apathy, given what the world is like today, and the world really is messed up in more ways than one today. What do you think, and how do you basically speak towards an apathetic person on this particular cause?
What an amazing person once told me, design with empathy. Design with empathy. And I didn't understand what that meant at the time. And I now understand that it's almost like you putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, right? Until, to your point, innocent, until you are put into that situation, you don't know how you're going to react, right? Until you're put into that corner, like with Mike Tyson, like he had to really dig deep in and take his stance and his stand to be able to fight another day. So that is one thing that you got to figure out, like what is the important things that you want to make sure that you not only be known for, but what is the impact that you want to leave? And I think for me, even when we're all gone from here, like what are the things that we need, again, that's going to affect the next generations? And to your point, because people aren't directly being affected by it, but we are. And the reason why we need to start thinking about these hard decisions and these choices, again, going back to those plastic bottles are ending up in the ocean. That's a direct correlation to you understand me? Your single-use plastic bottle ends up in a ocean near mammals that should not even know what plastic bottles are, right? So how do you start to realize, like, whoa, if I do A plus B, it's going to equal C. And so I think for me, just having these types of discussions right here and just having people realize that, yes, talking about carbon footprints and talking about sustainability, it can be a lot and a lot to unpack, but we're going to have to start having these conversations because some of these conversations are hard. Some of these conversations are things that haven't been brought up or haven't been figured out, but let's figure it out. And I think if we had more people, again, that was put into that situation of being in somebody's shoes, being empathetic, then we would be a better place and we would be able to make better product and we would be able to, help the oceans and the planet. But what is the signifier? What is the thing that will make somebody say, oh, maybe I need to think about my kids' generations, right? But until that happens, it's almost like until the world burns down, until it's set on fire, right? Nobody's going to be like, oh yeah, maybe I should just make those choices, which is why, even though this was a big conversation and I wanted to make it that way in order to start a discussion about sustainability, there were simple things that we can start doing, such as taking shorter, showers, making sure that we're turning off the water whenever we are doing. So those are the things that will help with your carbon footprint. So I think that there's some things that are a little bit more simplistic to be able to identify with. But to your point, people need to have empathy. And if the world had more empathy, then we would be a better place. So maybe we will have it one day. We just need to nurture it, almost like soil, and how to the quote that you said earlier, and how you nurture it, and then the roots start to catch, and then it grows.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, I'm going to turn to the audience question. If you have any question, please put in the chat. But before I do, just to corroborate what you said, there is a quote by the same poet. He once wrote that he said, we must believe like the seed that change is possible. The seed never sees the flower. It grows knowing it must become more than what it was. It changes because in growth, all of its potential is unlocked. And that's important because we just have to be like the seed. The seed goes into the ground and grow. It would never see the flower. And a lot of the effort we put in, no matter how little it may seem from day to day, is like that seed going into the soil. It just believes that it has to become something else, and then it changes. All right, so let me jump into the audience question.
That's
Sorry.
beautiful. Thank you, Innocent. You have some amazing quotes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So someone asked, do you think we still need to use raw or virgin materials to produce clothing? Can we reuse textile to reduce waste that's already there?
And so that's the thing. So it's almost like, do you upcycle? Do you recycle? Do you reuse? Right? And it's almost like, is anything that we doing that all of that is better than what we're doing currently, right? So if we use the recycled versions of, that's better. If we use less non-toxic plastics in our products, that would be better. Plastic that would again end up in the oceans, that would be better. So I think if yes, raw is good, but then at the same time, how do we make sure that we're doing either regenerative or we're doing sustainable or we are doing something that goes back into itself? Now, I would love for everybody to take their shirts and just cut them up and then sew them all back together, right? That's upcycling, which is really cool. That's thrifting, which is a lot of people do that. So there's so many ways that you can do it. Or again, do you look for a place that has something that is organic that says that, oh, within so much time that this breaks down and it becomes a flower pot in your house, right? So it just depends on the level that you want to do. But I feel like any step forward in sustainability is a huge step forward for the entire planet and the entire world. So any little inches, even centimeters, is everything, right?
Yeah, yeah. The next question is, so someone wrote, I've worked for a small fashion brand in New York City, and I think it's incredibly wasteful. As a fashion designer, what kind of trends are you seeing in terms of sustainability in the industry?
Let's see. Again, upcycling. I'm seeing a lot of that. I feel like, I don't know if you all remember when Billabong came out with the plastic water bottles. I'm going to keep talking about plastic water bottles, right? And so I remember that ad, right? I remember that ad. And I remember saying, wow, like that's really cool. And then, oh my God, what's the next version up? But I feel like we've had a lag, and I'm not talking about just Billabong or anybody. This is just across the industries that I'm referring to, right? That there was a trend. So there was a trend where being sustainable was trendy, right? Being sustainable was having a t-shirt that said that it has a better carbon footprint and carbon emissions and all of that great stuff, right? But it wasn't anything about building an entire collection or building a long-lasting product that people could grab onto, right? So I think that now that we're in a conversation of saying we're past sustainability just being a t-shirt, that now we can start having conversations of how can we build more collections? Like there are sustainable collections out there, and there are companies that are using the recycled versions of material, but how do we as an industry, as a fashion industry, as all of the industries hold hands and decide that, hey, we're going to take a stand here, making sure that we use less plastic by such and such date, or that we're going to make sure that every fashion brand across the US sign up to be able to say that they are going to use so much less toxins or so much less plastic. You understand me? So then it starts to be that metric system that I was talking about earlier. You can start to trace it. You can start to track it. So I think if we start to think in like measurable ways to track it, and I'm sure there are people doing it now, but we need to do it on a more global scale versus just doing something over here in the corner of the world and this entire place over here is not affected yet. So I think the impact and how we actually grow and create together and collaborate together would be amazing.
Okay, thank you. So there's another question. So now this is kind of now more directly to your practice. What kinds of sustainable practices are you working on incorporating into your work in fashion? And then the second question follow up on that is, where does cotton come into play in the role? Where does cotton come into play in this? Yeah.
Well, I'll start with that question. Again, for me, I'm a cotton purveyor, right? I'm a person that what is a purveyor? A purveyor is a person that has an idea, that has a vision, that has that is somebody that understands the gravity of something, or that wants to be able to show the longevity of something, right? To be able to, not almost like a heritage, almost something that is a legacy. So whenever I think about cotton, that is a legacy. That is also a commodity, right? But I look at cotton as something that needs to be preserved. And the reason why I say that I am a cotton purveyor is because, again, the soil is warming up. And for me, if we don't start taking notice of these things, what is going to happen by the time that the next kids generation, they will not have cotton shirts, right? So what does that impact? can you imagine living without cotton on your skin? Like that to me that's a game changer. So I think, again, unless something like that happens, then nobody is going to really do a lot. But I think if we start to be like, okay, if we do X or A plus B is going to equal to Z, right? So I think if we start to be able to measure it, and I think for me, cotton, again, is something that is so close to me. It's my love. And it is my mom and my dad. It is my family. It is my ancestors. So that's something that I hold close and dear and near to me, and something that I want to protect, and something that I want to show almost like in a different light. The light that has been shown in is a light where it could be derogatory. It could be, it was filled with pain, right? But then how do we talk about the love? How do we talk about the family? How do we talk about those things that are a little bit more difficult to have those decisions on? But at the same time, yeah, I'm a lover of cotton. So I want to continue to push in any way. How do we make it more sustainable or regenerative, or what is it that we need to do, even connecting up across industries, farmers, NGOs, everybody, right? How do we preserve across the country or across the globe? So I think cotton, to answer that question, is amazing. But then also you asked about sustainability. I think for me, I buy sustainable things, but for me as a designer, that's where I get my most sustainable part from, because I, as a designer, make sure that I'm putting in recycled versions of at the beginning of my design process. So again, I'm making sure that whatever that product ends up at, then is less of an impact than it would have if I had not done that. So as a designer, that is very important with either what you buy, what you wear. Think about where those things come from and the longevity and the life cycle and everything, the consumption, your consumption, the product consumption. But then at the same time, how do you also preserve cotton and the love of cotton and make it into the beautiful story that it is?
Awesome. Do we have any other questions? Okay. All right. So if we don't have any other questions, I would just I'll press Emiko for one more question that's kind of a bit of Hilt's. What's the importance? How significant and how important in the general conversation of climate change and sustainability? How important do you see two fields? One, designers, like general designers as a whole, and two, the fashion industry playing. And maybe I should give a bit of a background. I ask this because also there is often this thing about responsibility pushing, where we keep on pushing the ball down the line, pushing the buck down the line. And sometimes, rightfully so, we get angry at companies like Amazon and Apple because of what they claim as opposed to what they're actually doing. And the bigger they are, the harder they fall. But then where do you see the role of the actual designer in this case playing in the general conversation, and what role do you see the fashion industry playing in this general conversation?
So I think for me, I know that was like 3-part question, but I think for me, whenever I think about what do we do, right? What is it that we need? What needs to happen in the fashion industry? What needs to happen within brands or companies from a sustainable standpoint? What do we as human beings need to do in order to be better human beings for the next generation? And it's almost like, for me, every time I think of what do we do, it's education, right? It's education. How do you educate people on the do's and the don'ts? And not necessarily the do's and the don'ts, because you don't want to tell somebody what to do, right? But again, education, go get the book, right? I know that you can't see it, but it's cradle to cradle. And so I think whenever you pick up a book and you go inside and you start to realize that your world is a lot bigger than you see it as, then you start to realize, oh, wow, then that's where that knowledge comes from. So the more that you start to then link up with other people that are wanting to make that change, wanting to push forward, wanting to move forward, and you're using that education and you're using that momentum, then that is what will actually make change. If you think about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, he had an impact, right? And he had an amazing, huge impact, but he didn't have that impact just by himself. Like, he was an amazing icon, GOAT man, right? But at the same time, imagine him, and as he linked up to all of the other civil rights leaders and all of the other allies and all of the other ones, right, that were fighting for social justice, it became a bigger cause, right? And it took on bigger problems, and it made better solutions. So I think the same thing applies here. It comes down to education. It comes down to knowledge. It comes down to what is it that we all want to stand for? And what is it that we want to do for, again, next generations? Not what we're doing for us right now, but focusing on the next generations.
Thank you so much. So I think, I don't know, since we don't have any more questions, I would like to ask for your parting words. What's final words do you have for, well, for us all and for the world? Oh, not for the world, for us all here.
Show each other more love. Yeah, show each other more love. And I think for me, I keep going back to love. My mama, when I say my mom and my daddy, my mom and my daddy are love. And my dad passed away when I was 5 years old. And that was many moons ago. So imagine their love is still there. Like, regardless if he's not there, my father and my mom are still loved, right? And I think that if more people, not that more people were raised with love, but if more people were surrounded in love and surrounded in true love, right? There's a difference between love and real love and true love. So I think for me, just surround yourself in happiness, be happy for each other, have peace for each other, have love and share love for each other.
All right, thank you very much. I think my last word would be kind of in line with that a bit. Is that, well, not in line with that. It's important for us all to realize that while our stories might differ, Emiko's story might be cotton and boxing related. Our goal is still the same. Whether we like it or not, even if it's out of selfishness or if it's out of, out of a grander plan, our goal is the same. It's the survival of this earth, of how do we save this world is our goal. And as this guy who I overquote said, we have to act like as the rain and realize that with each drop, every single drop of what we do is important. And it's important that we act as one. When we act as one, then we become many. So
Right.
Thank you very much. Emiko, I don't know if you want to share your socials or how people could keep in touch with you if they have further questions, if they would like to have conversations with you about your career path as a designer or anything, please, you can go ahead and share.
Yes, you all can hit me up on Instagram, Emiko McCoy, EMIKOMCCOY, it's just my name. Or email me, emikomccoy@gmail.com.
All right.
Thank you
So
to everybody. Thank you.
I'll pass the mic back to Yutaka now.
Oh, hi. Thanks so much. Thank you for amazing conversation, and it's really inspiring. Thank you. So, well, we let's find out love and keep loving to each other. That's what we learned from today. And what's your love? And so it's still Wednesday. It's rainy in New York, but let's go out and find out love. Okay, so that's about it for tonight. And thank you very much, everybody, to come and join us. And if you want to find out more about Pratt a Creative Enterprise Leadership Program, please contact us, visit our website. And that's about it. So Prumi, take it away and please close.
Yes. Thank you everyone for showing up for our talk show. Thank you to our amazing guests and alumna. Emiko, I'm inspired by your stance and your love of cotton and sustainability. And thank you to our presenters, Professors Innocent and Yutaka, for moderating the conversation and connecting us with this cool alumni with Emiko.
Yes.
Lastly, thank you to everyone who joined in our conversation at CEL. We believe that creativity makes a difference in leading and managing change, including designing new strategies that serve our communities, cultures, businesses, and biosystems. May you find your purpose in being the solution for the problem that you see.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.